where we talk to marketers and designers in our industry. We learn more about their work and where they work and live, and other things that impact the work that they do day in and day out. There's two threads of conversations that you can follow along within this podcast. One's called Mad Nights, and one's called Mad Nights Big City. Mad Nights is where we talk to marketers and designers living and working in smaller cities and smaller markets. And Mad Nights Big City, obviously, is where we talk to marketers and designers working in bigger cities and larger markets. We're going to file this conversation under Mad Nights Big City, where we're going to be talking with Chris Kneeland. And Chris Kneeland lives and works in Calgary, Alberta. And I think we can safely assume that Calgary falls under sort of the bigger city category. But before we talk about Chris and get into our conversation with Chris, I just want to thank a few people and a few companies that make this podcast possible. One is Chris Arledge, who's done some graphic works for us and came up with the Nifty Mad Nights logo. So I want to thank Chris and all of his work for Mad Nights. And you can learn more about Chris at chrisarledge.com. The other is Graham Marshall, who does the music off the top and at the tail of the podcast. And you can learn more about Graham and what he's doing at gmrcreatives.com. The other company I want to give a shout out to is Cheeky Monkey Media. They've been a huge supporter of Mad Nights, and we really appreciate everything they do. And they're just a really great fit for what we're doing here and the conversations we're having. They do work for design studios and marketing agencies in our industry, as well as their own work with clients, nonprofits, green tech, for-profits, nonprofits, all of that kind of stuff. And you can learn more about Cheeky Monkey Media and what they're doing at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. Let's talk a little bit about Chris Kneeland and who we're going to be, chatting with today. Chris Kneeland and his business partner Ryan Gill own three companies. One is called The Cult Collective, which is a marketing services firm devoted to helping brands achieve irrational customer loyalty and enjoy cult-like status. They are also owners and partners in Communo, which is a new type of outsourcing solution designed specifically for marketing service providers to assist other marketing service providers in providing solutions to their clients. In addition to that, they are also partners in The Gathering of Cult Brands, which is an event an annual event that is designed to honor and celebrate some of the world's best brands and what they do and how they do what they do to enjoy cult-like status. Now, what's interesting about Chris is, and this runs through the three companies that he runs along with Ryan Gill, is that he is obsessed with helping marketers break bad habits and stop the insanity of wasting obscene amounts of money on mass media and markdowns, which seems to be the go-to with so many brands today. And what he strives to do is help them engage in a clear voice and in ways that matter. So we have a great conversation with Chris. And a lot of it has to do with a project that came through Communo right around the beginning of COVID. And it was called Some Good News with John Karinsky. And we talk about how Communo was a big part of that project, how it connected John and his team to other teams within the Communo network, and how those teams helped John do the work that he wanted to do, and how that project, that initiative, that series on YouTube became so popular, not just on YouTube, but what they did on so many other channels as well. And what's interesting about that project is it's called Special and Meaningful. So we talked with Chris about what a special and meaningful project is, and more importantly, how we find them. And then we also talk about the gathering, which is going to be, I think, a virtual event this year, and so many other things, including where Chris works and lives, and how that impacts his work, his family life, and just a great sort of wide ranging conversation. I hope you enjoy it. We're going to dig into it now. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
uh, Thanks for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. You got to give me a heads up. Is this audio or is this going to be a video? I got to decide how
This is this
professional I'm
is
supposed
this
to
is
look.
going to be video, but in my opinion, you look great, and I love the pictures in behind you there.
Yeah, thank you. That's my wife's doing. I feel like it's the speak no evil, hear no evil, whatever the third one is.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Have you
have
got?
the monkey head all of a sudden. I think she's being not so subtle, calling me a monkey.
um, so I thought before we get into some of the questions that we've kind of talked about, that we should probably provide a little bit of context. So I've got sort of three rapid fire questions to shoot your way, and hopefully that'll provide some context for the rest of the conversation. So those three questions are: what is Communo? Who is John Krasinski? And what is some good news?
Perfect. So Communo is an open talent platform. We affectionately refer to it as if Tinder and LinkedIn had a baby, it would have birthed Communo. So it's a way for people who need workers to find people who need work, particularly within the advertising, marketing, and digital ecosystems. So you wouldn't go to Communo to find a dog walker, a babysitter, or an architect, but you'd go there to get a video, a website, a mobile app, a press release, a brochure, things along those lines. It's about 4 years old. It's going phenomenally well. We're quite excited about it because I think it represents the way that work will work in the future, as we've seen sort of the rise of the entrepreneur and the freelancer and the demise of the traditional full-time employee, certainly the gainfully employed marketing professional who I think it's insightful that they were the first to go when the crap hit the fan with COVID, and the marketing departments just were obliterated. And I think we can find greater job security. Many people, not everybody, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur, but many people could probably be more gainfully employed, make more money, have more security, work on more stimulating projects if they hang their own shingle or work for themselves, or join a small consortium of people and start something on their own. So that's what Communo is. John Krasinski is most famous for being Jim on The Office. I personally like him more as Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime. But he is just a genuinely interesting and good-hearted bloke. And he was had a couple of things lined up. He was going to be filming Jack Ryan season 3. He was rumored to have been selected as a hero in the Marvel universe, Fantastic Four. And perhaps most interestingly at the time, last spring, he was supposed to be the host on Saturday Night Live the week that the world went into lockdown, or at least the states went into lockdown. So he was bummed. That was a professional dream of his. He was wondering, what does this mean for all of the disparate projects? He's also the director and getting ready to release A Quiet Place 2. So like his entire world kind of came to a screeching halt. And he made lemonade out of lemons, and he had always had this romantic notion of doing something that shined a spotlight on positivity and on all the good that is out there, particularly in the media space. We tend to be, particularly in an election year, there's just a lot of negativity. Yeah. And so he said, you know what, I got some time on my hands now. All of my projects have been halted through no fault of my own. Let's go do this. And while he had an idea, it was a lot of digital work and video work and social media work that he was not particularly competent in. And so he reached out to the president of Communo out of New York and said, is this something that you're group could help us with. And it was a great stress test on the system to say, are we as good as we think we are? I think the other interesting soundbite is I don't believe that was his first call. I believe his first call was to the more traditional Hollywood studio production, big agency types. And they either tried to talk him out of it, saying this is not something that A-list actors would do, or they tried to say it's crazy, you can't produce a show that anybody's going to watch. So I love the idea of doing something that others deemed impossible. And it wasn't impossible, it was improbable, but not impossible. So Mike went into the network and put together a patchwork quilt of talent with disparate skill sets, and had the team within 3 days. That's kind of the Communo promise. It usually takes 3 to 6 or 36 days to kind of find and vet a contractor. We try to do that in 36 hours. And they produced their first show, I believe, within 2 weeks after that. And it went on to kind of become the viral hit of the pandemic. It was the fastest show on YouTube, I think, to get over 10 million or 100 million followers. It just kept breaking different records. And John fulfilled his commitment to it, which was to produce the first 8 episodes. He then sold it to CBS, or I believe it was CBS, for a ridiculous amount of money, and now it's going to continue on as a thing with John being more of a producer. And I kind of think of it like the way carpool karaoke exploded in the early days, and Apple bought it, and then it's become a different thing with different celebrities, and it's on that kind of track now.
Gotcha.
That was a long answer to your question. Do we still have time for more, or was that our show?
No, that's good. That's good. So you mentioned that that calls were made. So and you try and match people with vetted talent within 36 hours. So can you dig in a little bit more about what that process looks like, and specifically what it might have looked like for some good news?
Yeah, so this is where we kind of use the Tinder metaphor, right? I mean, Tinder prioritizes 2 things. Do I think that you're hot, and are you nearby, right? And if 2 parties are mutually attracted to somebody and it's mutually convenient, they can then hook up someplace in real life, or have an online conversation. Communo tries to decide what are the other factors of compatibility besides just availability and attraction. Do you have capacity? Do you have a particular competence or skill set? Do you have maybe a geographic advantage? Do you have a price? Are you within the budget that's been allotted? Do you have a particular working style that's going to be conducive to what this project is? So once you've put your need out there, I need somebody that knows Instagram, I need somebody that can do post-production, I need somebody that can solicit sponsorship, whatever your business needs are, you put that into the tool, and then people who are interested in those services raise their hand. But then you don't just say, okay, you're my guy or you're my gal. You then have a conversation. You still have to create a statement of work. You still have to negotiate the terms of an agreement. So, it's the hybrid of kind of using the technology to go from a list of infinite possibilities, literally hundreds of thousands of people worldwide that could do a particular skill set, to find 6, 8, 10 people that are the most likely to meet your needs given a set of criteria that you've defined. And then once you find them, then you pick up the phone and you talk to them, you vet it, you decide if it's going to work or not. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. That's what it was for Some Good News. That's what it is for the thousands of people. I mean, there's over 4,000 projects on Communo at any given time. So there's a lot of, we call it deal flow, of people kind of giving and getting work. But unlike some of our competitors, we don't take a commission. We don't know the terms of that contract. You don't owe us anything based on what you've negotiated. So once those relationships are taken offline, much like Tinder, they don't know who got married or who broke up or who was a creep. Like their job was to say, my job is to help you meet people faster so that you can then make smarter decisions about who you want to have a relationship with.
Right on. There's no, there's no real sort of you mentioned calls, so you're not speaking to somebody's not setting things up for you. The system just kind of does it for you, right? You put out your needs, and agencies or brands or whatever that are looking for needs, and if something jumps out at either party, they hook up.
Yeah, that's how the majority of people use it. It's a self-service
Yeah.
app, the way that nobody's helping. You're not calling a dispatcher to get an Uber. You're just saying I need to get picked up, and an
Yeah.
Uber driver shows up, right? So
Yeah.
that's the simplicity of it. We do have what we call a concierge service. And usually it's because people are either too busy or their needs are so great that they'd rather have somebody do it for me. So we do have the capability within the Communo platform to say, if you'd rather just have somebody that can either dictate what your needs are, or receive your dictation of needs, and then they go find them. And because there is still interviewing that has to happen. Going from 1,000 options to 6 is pretty good, but you still need to go to 1. And so how do you go from 6 to 1? You can choose to delegate that to a Communo co-pilot, we call them, and they'll help you do that. And sometimes people just are like, I've got 8 people I need. This project just came up, particularly in post-COVID, with so many marketing departments and so many agency relationships being decimated. They're like, we got to pick this e-commerce project up where we left off, or we got to redeploy this live event and turn it into a virtual event. I need a lot of help quickly. That's kind of how John did it. It wasn't like John Krasinski was the guy on the app sourcing and vetting these things. He wouldn't know what to ask for or what to look for. So in that case, he relied on a Communo co-pilot to kind of help with that sourcing and vetting of stuff. He just needed the benefits. He didn't want any of the effort or work to know who's going to be the best post-production sound guy.
Gotcha.
He wanted somebody to make that decision for him.
Gotcha. So among some of the partners or vendors that were brought on through the platform, you had or he had Senior Post and Leroy out of New York. He had Made in Network out of Nashville. He had Arcade out of Calgary, which is cool because you're out of Calgary. Communo's out of Calgary. And he had Giflytics out of New Haven. Was there any other organizations, companies, freelancers involved in the project, or did that pretty much wrap up what was needed?
Yeah, no, that was the core group that was assembled. I think that this was in March and April, so I think now in September and October, people have gotten more comfortable with the idea of remote workforces. I've always thought it's a little narrow-minded to assume that the top talent you want to work with are going to have also chosen to live in your city. So I appreciated John's, willingness or open-mindedness to say, I don't care where they're at. I just need these things done. And then also, an American company hiring a Canadian service provider was also a financially advantageous decision because of the strength of the US dollar or the weakness of the Canadian dollar. So I think there was a lot of pleasant surprises there that if you can get some of that talent north of the 49th parallel, there's actually some cost savings as well. But that team was able to be sort of herded together, and everybody had very clear roles and responsibilities. So there was no real turf battles over who was going to do what. I think John and his team did a great job, letting experts be experts and not trying to micromanage different aspects of it.
Yeah, excellent. So I kind of dug into Arcade's sort of case study on the project, and they talked a lot about it just being a special and meaningful project, and then I saw some of Ryan Gill's interviews about the project and Communo's role, and he used those two words as well, special and meaningful. And I know throughout my career, I've tried to find those projects for the teams that I'm working with. Everybody gets excited about those types of projects, but they're few and far between. I find, and it's great that that Communo can be sort of that avenue to possibly find those types of projects for these creative groups. But if you go back to, say, like the traditional model, like for your company, for our company, and other agencies out there, like what advice, what do you do, what's been your experience in sort of maintaining that balance between sort of finding meaningful projects, those special projects, and then also making sure you're finding, good projects that pay the bills?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think part of what makes it special and meaningful is that it's also lucrative. I mean, this wasn't pro bono work. This was
Yeah.
part of the specialness was it was this trifecta of really cool project that was super successful and that was also financially rewarding, right? I mean, so that
Yes.
if you can find those things, you're cooking with gas. Where I'm most disappointed, I actually disagree with you, Dennis. I don't think they're few and far between. I think they're happening all the time. And what I counsel with a lot of Communo members is that there's a lot of either entitlement or naivety around thinking that these things are going to serve themselves up on a silver platter. And when that work was posted on Communo, we didn't know at the time that we had uranium on our hands. It wasn't posted as a $100,000 Instagram, social media agency opportunity for the fastest growing show, during the pandemic. Right. It was posted as this guy we didn't even name drop John Krasinski. This production company is looking for some social media work. It could have been one and done. It could have been, I don't remember, but let's assume it was posted for a $5,000 quick turn social media project.
Yeah.
I think people that are waiting for life to serve them up opportunities on a silver platter that have eliminated all risk and have clarified all the reward are going to find them few and far between.
Yeah.
But people that are jumping in and doing great work and finding ways to collaborate, have a what can I give more than what can I get mentality, will just find doors opened for them. And you might have to go into some small rooms before you get open to the next door, which reveals Narnia, right?
Yeah.
And if you're waiting for Narnia to be posted on the job board, I'm like, that's just naive. Like if I see Nike posting a $50,000 job, I'm replying. I don't really want a $50,000 project. I want $1 million RF, and $1 million retainer.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to take 6 months and jump through ridiculous hoops of non-billable time responding to a Nike RFP. I'd rather just, one of my very favorite quotes of all time is, "Don't tell me you're funny, just tell me a joke." And I think the freelance, the agency community would do a whole lot better. Just start telling jokes as opposed to spending all these calories trying to submit proposals and produce content and do all these things that tell people how awesome they are. Just roll up your sleeves and start being awesome. And small projects become big projects. Somebody that you worked on with this thing said, "That was awesome. Will you come over here and work with me on that thing?" And I think we need to view every single thing we do as a business development opportunity that could manifest itself in something richer. And if you go into it with that kind of attitude, I think you'll find them a lot less few and far between than maybe people think. One of my very quick stories of one of my favorite Communo success stories is there was a longstanding member out of Kingston, Ontario, small market. And I really like Communo for small market talent because they so often get disadvantaged. It's not their fault that they've chosen to raise their family in these, high quality, low cost of living kind of markets, but they get disadvantaged because they're not in these major hubs. So Communo is a way for them to access, New York, LA, San Fran, Toronto, Vancouver kind of work. But you can live in a Boise, or you can live in an Austin, or you can live in a Calgary, an outskirt of town. So Kingston, Ontario is a pretty small market. But this Communo member made a decision that he was going to meet one new Communo member a week. And so I'm going to try this for 12 months. I'm going to give it my all. 52, I think he did 50, I think 2 weeks of holiday. But I'm going to meet 50 new members. And I don't know how far. And let's assume he had a couple dozen meetings, and he decides I'm going to reach out to this member and go grab a coffee or do lunch. There was absolutely zero obvious connection. This particular guy was a bit of a brand strategist. He was having lunch with a guy that was a bit of an audiophile that does a bunch of post-production audio work, voiceovers, that kind of stuff. But he wasn't going into it with this expectation that this meeting is going to, have an ROI, that this guy's going to have an audio project for me. Which again, one of the reasons I love what we call about Communo with a commune. Everybody contributes something unique, and the commune benefits as a whole. So they're talking over lunch, and this guy asked the audio guy, like, what would be your dream project? He says, what I love to do most is discover local bands, discover music, help local artists kind of use my studio and cut their first album, this kind of thing. And a day or two later, the brand strategist is talking with somebody either from like the Chamber of Commerce or the Economic Development Council, some municipal employee who's trying to find a way to make Kingston a more, have a better identity for a young startup, hipper family, they have a bunch of old people that retire there and used to work for the prison system. So they want to have a different vibe in their city. And the strategist says, well, what we could do is we could create some local music scene that we could interview people on a podcast, and we could partner with the radio station and play their music, and we could partner with this venue and do a live show. And the city council just ate this up. And they said, well, what would that cost? And he puts together a proposal, and it's 6 figures. And then he goes back to the guy that he had lunch with and said, hey, let's go do this together, right? And so I love was that serendipity? Was it coincidence? Or was it like that's how life is supposed to work, when well-intentioned, capable, talented people get together in a spirit of collaboration and try to, help each other do awesome stuff. And, that was not served up to him on a silver platter. They didn't, and either of them could have canceled that lunch meeting, and that project would have never happened. But those are the kinds of collisions I think we need to be much more open-minded for and seek out.
It is tough. I mean, living in and working in a small market. We're in Kelowna, and that's what is it, like 120,000? So it's not a small city, but it's smaller. And I've been here for over 10 years now, and it's when I was first here, it was extremely tough. But it's grown. It's become more creative, more versatile in the types of industries and businesses that are here, and so there's a number of opportunities to support creative people, but they have to get out. We always say this: you have to get outside of Kelowna. You have to get outside of the Okanagan Valley, and often you have to get outside of British Columbia, have those conversations with those people, and if Communo can be an opportunity to do that. I do understand that Communo has this 2-part system where you can't just plunk your name on the system and hope the work comes to you. You actually have to work the system, right? You have to.
I mean, it's you're not subscribing to a silver spoon that's going to, there's some people, I equate it a lot to a gym membership. If you want to be healthy, active, gain weight, lose weight, whatever your goals are, a great idea is to join the gym. Mm-hmm. But you still haven't achieved your goals. You got to show up at the gym every day. You got to know how to use the equipment properly. You have to have discipline. So, we do have those concierges that I mentioned are sort of the equivalent of a personal trainer. If you're trying to achieve a particularly ambitious goal, or you need to do something particularly fast, and you don't know how to use all the machines, it might be helpful to have a little bit of a guide. But for the most part, it's a gym, and all the equipment is here. Everything you need to do is to be successful. But if you're not showing up every morning and putting in the work, you're never going to see the result.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Thank you. So let's talk about so Communo was kind of I guess a side project from your agency called Collective, correct? Like you and Ryan are partners in that agency, and you were looking for a solution that I mean, Chris Goker from Critical Mass calls it liquid talent, where you can kind of ramp up and ramp down on projects, and you and Ryan came up with this idea, and it's now got a life of its own almost, right? Another side project that you guys work together on and continue to work together on is The Gathering. Can you tell us a little bit more about The Gathering, what that is?
Yeah, The Gathering is very near and dear to my heart. It was so Communo was birthed out of solving a selfish need. We saw increasing volatility in the marketplace for professional marketing services and creative and digital solutions. And it's just an economic truth that when you're staring down the barrel of volatility, you need to start transferring fixed expenses to variable expenses. And in a small agency, your largest fixed expense is overhead. I consider it fixed expenses. I think some poor agencies consider it variable, and they just are in a perpetual state of hiring and firing. Yeah. I didn't want to be that kind of roller coaster. Yeah. Communo was sort of just a solution that would allow our business to weather the unpredictable days ahead. And we just didn't realize how novel it was. As I talked with my other agency principal peers, they could not imagine a scenario where they could grow their businesses without growing their headcount. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's what we've been doing for the past 8 years. What are you talking? I didn't, and when I would see their face, and it would either be unbelief or envy, I'd be like, well, let me tell you more about how that works. And so then we realized dozens and then hundreds and then thousands of people said, well, that sounds better than what I'm doing. Let's join that. So we had to create something for the world. Yeah. The Gathering was kind of opposite. I mean, The Gathering wasn't so much a selfish desire for us. It was a injustice that we perceived in the universe, where particularly the creative community was celebrating creativity for creativity's sake, which I personally don't have a huge problem with. I like a creative idea as much as anybody else, but then they were labeling it advertising, which is unethical, because creativity designed to solve business challenges should not be rewarded for how creative it was. It should be rewarded for how effective it was. Yeah. And when we looked at, I mean, the ad industry in particular rewards itself more than any other industry, including Hollywood, which is pretty self-centered. But, you know, and probably the Academy Awards of the ad industry is probably the Cannes Lion. And you look at this mecca that they had created, and this $100 million asset that had been built, and these agencies pining for a Cannes Lion, and it just became this, pardon the expression, but this circle jerk of people standing around, you know, pleasuring themselves for how awesome they are. And it's like, but you know, a lot of this stuff was pro bono. A lot of this stuff barely saw the light of day. A lot of this stuff did nothing to help their clients' business. So stop calling it an advertising festival. Stop labeling it advertising. Yeah. You know, it should just be like an art gallery. It should just be fun ideas that had little to no impact on the world, or unknown impact on the world. And then when we looked at other businesses that we thought were exceptional, that we have come to call cult brands, nobody was talking about them because they don't do Super Bowl commercials, or they're not spending hundreds of millions of dollars on mass media. They were just going about the business of building remarkable companies. And, you know, sometimes they would get honored for like fastest growing, or maybe they might be honored for top performing stocks. But we thought what was the most impressive thing about them was the significance that they made on the lives of the people that they serve, whether those be employees or customers, or sometimes franchisees was a kind of a third category. So we just started looking at a whole different set of KPIs that measured engagement, you know, the affinity and the emotional attachment that people have for a category that manifests itself. One of the symptoms of engagement is they're really successful. It's really hard to find a cult brand that's not, you know, Marvel wouldn't be as beloved if they kept they didn't sell movie tickets, right? Porsche wouldn't be as beloved. Levi's, Starbucks, Apple, all these companies that we kind of put on pedestals have to be successful, but they don't. Success is an output of their significance, and so we're fascinated by how do they do that. And then they were remarkably candid, and they were like, "Well, if this is true," I remember Harley Davidson talking about the CMO of Harley Davidson talking about how he spends his discretionary dollars and how most of it, 85%, goes on retention and upsell, not on acquisition, which is the exact opposite of how most businesses spend their discretionary dollars. I'm like, you should tell that to people. People should say, if you want to build a brand like Harley, you're doing it wrong. Right? And so the gathering just became a way to say, don't take my word for it. I'm not unbiased in this conversation. I want you to hire me to help you do that. But so let's just, it's not the Chris Kneeland show. It's not even the cult marketing show. It's a unique thing called The Gathering, designed to showcase the most beloved brands on the planet. And it turns out there was an appetite for that. We had a few hundred people at the first one. We had over 1,200 people at the last one. For 2021, we hope to have even more different regions, virtual. We're trying to take it to the masses. COVID's accelerated some of our ambitions for the event because these are amazing stories. They're so rewarding. So, building a great company is fun. And I just don't see a lot of marketers and brand leaders having as much fun because they've gotten addicted to these superficial stimuli of media and markdowns and sales promotions. And it's just, they're distracted. And we're trying to shake some sense into them and get them focused on the right things. Sorry, I get worked up even just talking about it. But I really feel it's one of my life's missions is to help people realize that there's a completely different way to go about engaging consumers that is not dependent upon the playbooks that you think are required because you learned in grad school, 30 years ago or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I read somewhere, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that there might have been a sort of a business development idea attached to the gathering. Hey, if we start talking to some of these big brands, and we get them presenting, we get them some exposure, we get them presenting at the gathering, we get to talk to them, build a relationship with them as they're going through that process. Who knows? The next time they need something, they might think of us, and boy, wouldn't that be great? I don't know if that was true, but it was there.
It's mostly true what you had said, with one significant caveat. With the people that we honor have always been hands off. That we have a no solicitation policy. So if we're going to bring Marvel or Disney or the Lakers to the gathering, they're not there as prospects for cult. It's the 1,000 people who buy tickets to learn from their stories, to be inspired by what they've done, to hopefully have the realization, shoot, I'm doing this all wrong. If you need some help to course correct, then I would hope that you would consider that the people that brought this event to you, that exposed you to those philosophies, could provide some assistance to you as well. So what we call the honorees, every year there's 8 to 12 brands that we kind of put on a pedestal, and we spend a lot of time getting to know them and scoring. We start with over 100 every year, and we kind of whittle it down. That part's very pure and sort of sacrosanct, and then we have a sort of a church and state policy that says they're there as our role models. The attendees are there as our prospects.
Gotcha. So obviously this is a lot of work. I can imagine Communo's a ton of work, and you're trying to run an agency at the same time. What advice would you give to say, even myself running a podcast, if there was a business development angle to that, or somebody else planning an event, or maybe writing a book, whatever endeavor that they might get into that isn't their main line of business, but it's going to take some effort. Like what keeps you doing it? Is it something that you would recommend? Is it something for the faint of heart? Do you need something special? What sort of advice would you give to somebody about starting a side project like the Gathering, or whatever they might start, whether it be for business development or whatever, but to get their name out there, have those conversations, that type of thing?
Two things come to mind. First, you got to be really clear what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think there's too many random acts of content marketing going on. Like I wrote a book not because I expected to make money on book sales. I wrote a book because I needed the discipline to codify my point of view that I could build an agency around. So our book was a selfish endeavor that now serves as a very expensive brochure, right? So the book exercise was not a money maker. It was a strategy builder and an agency positioning clarifier.
Okay.
The Gathering has become a alternative revenue generator that is independent of any business development. So this story that we've been talking about, that was year one, right? We thought we were going to do one big event and use it to appeal to the prospects. Okay. It didn't work real well. It wasn't a great business development thing. So we were done with it. And then it was the participants who said, no, that was amazing. You guys got to do that again. I'm like, what do you mean do that again? It's like having another wedding. Like, it was a lot of work, a lot of money. And just because it was a great party doesn't mean I want to do it again. And then they said, no, we can help you. We ended up getting a board. The head of South by Southwest came onto our board and said, you need to think differently about this. It is a business in and of itself. Mm-hmm. If Colt ends up getting some work out of it, that's extra credit. But you need sponsors, you need a ticket strategy, you need a content strategy that would make it so valuable that it becomes self-sufficient. So it became a different thing. We've dabbled with podcasts, been very disappointed with them, much like you. Like, you might say, I don't need to work with my guests, but I need to create such compelling content that my listeners would say, Dennis is a cool guy, he has some strong opinions, I should hire him. So you have to decide what's the light that's going to attract the moths, not to call your prospects moths, but you have to decide, what are you really trying to do? And then you need to measure it appropriately. If you're doing this 5 years from now and your listeners still haven't turned into some money, you've wasted your time. So give yourself a KPI, a metric, give it enough time. Don't cut it too early because they didn't have time to get traction, but certainly don't cut it too late. So what that Goldilocks moment is, I don't know. It's different for everything. So the first point would be, have very clear objectives. Don't fool yourself into why you're doing what you're doing. Like, I put a lot of stuff out on social media. I do it because it's a release valve for me. It's a way for me to keep my instrument sharp. It's a way for me to kind of feel the pulse of which way things are blowing. It's a way for me to elevate my personal confidence and my external status as a thought leader. But I don't expect somebody to reply to my LinkedIn post saying, hey, can we work together? That's not why I invest the time. And it's also why I make sure I don't spend a lot of resources doing it versus a sales team or other outbound new business activity that we do.
Right.
So clarify your objective and make sure it's realistic and measured. And then the second thing I would say is don't go in alone. I mean, the number of solopreneurs and independent people that think they're going to build a successful company on their own, I think is foolish. There's just too many disparate things you need to be excellent at. Account management, business operations, sales, strategy, content creation, promotion. So I got very, very lucky in that I have a great business partner. He's the yin to my yang, and we're complements. So as we got bigger, I could say, I'll do more of this, you do more of that. We've hired a fabulous, we've had 3 different general managers of the Gathering over its 8 years, people that can kind of take small events and make them bigger, medium events and make them world class. And so we always look for talent, the old adage, hire people smarter than yourself.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. We just partnered with another podcast company now that does this for a living. So rather than us dabbling in podcasts and putting random musings into the ecosystem there, we're like, let's get on strategy. Let's understand how to promote it. Let's understand how to produce it more economically. Let's understand how to attract advertisers. Like, it's a business. So have enough respect for the different things that you're trying to do to say you're probably not going to crack that code on a Saturday night when you have somebody else that's doing it 50 hours a week, all day, every day. So
Yeah.
have them help you. And you have to spend a little bit of money to make a little bit of money. Maybe you do fewer, bigger, better things. That's what we've tried to do. We've tried too many things, frankly, in our journey. So we got to kind of go back and say, let's pick a few and double down on them and just perpetually dabble.
Right. But you have used the term that that some of the things that you've tried, and even some of the things that have been successful, the Gathering and Communo in a way, you said they were selfish endeavors in the beginning. And you did mention your social media posts too, like if nobody responds to them, that's okay, right? Like, so in the beginning, just to clarify, was the Gathering a selfish endeavor that turned into a business?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I say it's okay to be selfish. We sit around a table and we try to say, how are we going to create relevance and significance in the world? Our number one concern launching Cult was Calgary. Calgary is not known as a marketing-centric town. Other than critical mass, no agency has really created relevance, but certainly in the States or globally. And so we were handicapped a little bit by we love to live here, great place to raise our family, nice place to have a business, but we didn't want to be a big deal in Alberta. Right. We wanted to be a big deal on a global stage. So we started looking at what are the options. And so, as I mentioned, when we concocted the Gathering, we didn't think about a 10 or 20-year event. We thought about a coming out party. Let's have a party that would showcase what we believe in, which is cult brand principles. Yeah. And when we had that party, it was an awesome party and it failed the objective. Mm-hmm. The attendees of that event did not turn around and hire us. Right. So we moved on to other things that we said, well, what else can we do? And then it was, well, no, don't give up on that. It's not good for the thing you thought it was going to be good for, but it could be exceptional at this other thing. Do you want to do that? One of my ambitions as an entrepreneur has always been to make money while I sleep. My least favorite thing about being in the advertising or the marketing business is it's kind of a billable hour type of thing. I can only sell as many hours as I have in a day. Versus a content business, whether it be a book, a movie, a podcast, an event, that makes money regardless of the number of hours that you put in. Yeah. So I was very attracted to say, all right, let's create a different business model now, but let's change the strategy, let's change its purpose statement, let's change the team and treat it as a different animal.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's move ahead, because you touched on Calgary and living and working in Calgary, and what I noticed from your LinkedIn profile is at the very least some of the places you've worked for, Home Depot, John Deere, some of the other agencies you've worked for, the locations were different. Did you live in those locations, or did you live in Calgary and work?
I'm 46 years old. I've lived in 9 states, Texas twice, and now 2 countries. So yeah, I've moved around a lot.
And do you have a favorite, like, and I don't know what your qualifications would be for favorite, like a creative, inspiring, community, or great place to raise a family, or but to as a creative person, a marketer, an entrepreneur, and obviously a family man. What were some of your favorite places to live, and why?
What's interesting is it's hard for me to find a place that I didn't like. I was born in Fargo, North Dakota. I don't think I would like there if I was to. I don't remember it. I left as a baby, but St. Louis, Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, San Francisco, DC, Raleigh, Salt Lake. Those all kind of come to mind. I know what I don't like for myself is I would never live in LA or New York. I wouldn't move back to Chicago, and I wouldn't move to San Francisco or Miami. So tier one huge cities, I don't enjoy. I like to visit. I like to vacation there. I love to visit clients that are there. Like Chicago for 3 days is a fantastic long weekend. I really gravitate towards Raleigh, North Carolina, Salt Lake. I could live in Boise. I could live in Austin. I like sort of those tertiary cities, big enough to maybe have a professional sports team, but not so big that you're sitting in hour traffic and breathing smoggy air. Also places that have great cost of living. I like land. I like a big house. I want to have a place for the kids to be able to run around. I have 3 kind of hyperactive boys. So I actually think where I live is 98% based on personal preferences, and then 2% based on access to an international airport, so I can get to any client anywhere that I need to go.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So back in 2008 to 2010, you were living and working in Texas for an agency called RAP, right? Is that correct? Yeah. And so that was obviously a trying time. There was an economic slowdown at that time, and we're in one right now, along with a global pandemic and a bunch of other things. What was there anything that you learned back then, going through that at that time, and what we're doing that's applied or helped you in how you think and work through what we're going through now? Or are there any new things that you've learned about what we're going through now that that you'd like to share with creatives and agencies that are trying to work through it as well?
Sure. A couple of things. I love the quote. Somebody said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." So I think that you should use these things as opportunities to right-size your organizations, narrow your positioning, become more indispensable. There's just too much average, too much mediocrity. I always use the example. There's 17 ranch dressings at my grocery store. It's just stupid. We don't need 17 ranch dressings. There's too many people, too many businesses that are not sufficiently differentiated to really warrant their existence. And things like an economic downturn cull the herd pretty quick. And I don't feel bad about that. I feel like, for the most part, those were businesses that were exploiting a first world, abundance-rich societal mentality anyway. And I don't think we need that much excess in our lives. I also think about, when the housing market cratered, it was 8 years after the dot-com bubble kind of happened, and then this recession is kind of 10 years after that one. We should stop thinking of these as black swan events. We should start just recession-proofing our businesses now. I think a pandemic is particularly interesting because any business where people are shoulder to shoulder is in jeopardy. And I don't think we would have considered live events or movie theaters or cruises or college education so susceptible to they're in trouble not because of the recession as much as just the change to how people are going to want to socialize. And those would have been, you would have had a pretty good crystal ball to have predicted that. But there's a lot of businesses that don't take that much imagination. The movie theater business was a pretty lousy business to begin with. Yeah. And this recession and COVID simply exposed it for all of its weaknesses, right? And other things like, online. I heard that e-commerce was growing at about 1% a year for the past 10 years and has grown 12% in the past 8 months. So that's another example of, well, if it's just better, faster, cheaper, double down on that. That is the future. So I think everybody should be kind of looking at their business and either trying to future proof it or recession proof it, because there's just a lot of legacy and a lot of old dogs unwilling to learn new tricks, who are uncomfortable with change. And I was consulting with Blockbuster Video when they collapsed, and it's just bang your head against the wall moments that they don't think that it is as bad as it really is. They don't think change will happen as fast as it really will. And somebody like Zoom can kick Skype out of our personal mindset in 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And that is, you get whiplash from some of that change. And we should assume that when I hear about the new normal, it's not like going back to restaurants. It's about constantly having your head on a swivel and being far more nimble, and agility taking on a higher priority within a company's strategic planning.
Excellent. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for sharing, your advice and your stories.
I enjoyed the conversation.